And we're live here at KIDO Talk Radio. A great friend, Congressman Mike Simpson, with us. So is it time to declare your candidacy for governor? You could be the unifier and bring everybody together as a write-in candidate, sir?
That would be my candidacy in, 2026 or something like that? I don't know. I'm glad I'm not in the governor's race right now. It is a competitive race with three really competitive people running. And as we were just saying off the air, I could make an argument that each one of them is going to win.
Right.
I have my preference. We're co-chairs of the Little campaign. I've worked with him for a number of years and know his capabilities and stuff, and so I've been supporting him for the last year. But still, it is a close race. I guess the good thing is that I've been in Washington the last 2 weeks, so I haven't seen local television. Now that I've been home this week, man, there is a lot of commercials out there.
We're very happy about that with the media
Yeah,
companies.
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to make second quarter because of the politics. But as someone who has worked his way up as a state rep, as Speaker of the House, as a congressman, who's been in the arena, I mean, you've done it at the highest levels.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of just people so engaged in the race for governor, first CD, lieutenant governor? I mean, most of us look at these things from a distance, but you've been involved in all of this.
Yeah, well, I think it's great. Democracy works best when people are engaged. And you've got three candidates on the Republican side running for governor that have three different visions of where they want to take the state. If you look at the 1st Congressional District, we got 4 candidates running there that are all good candidates. And any one of them could win. You could make arguments for or against any one of them. And that's great for the American public. But what I encourage people to do is to get out and not just listen to the commercials, because commercials are commercials that we create, so they're sometimes a little misleading. But get out and learn what the candidates think, what they want to do, why they're running, and that's important.
Indeed. Let's talk about you.
Okay.
You're running for a big gig.
I'm running for re-election, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a primary opponent this year.
Well, no, I mean, but if reelected.
If reelected.
Right, you're going for the big enchilada.
Well, there is the chairman of the Full Appropriations Committee is retiring. Good friend of mine, Rodney Frelinghuysen from New Jersey. He decided to retire, and so in Washington, things operated on a seniority-based system. And on the Appropriations Committee, I'm like the third in line to be full committee chairman. And sometimes they jump somebody, like Greg Walden jumped John Shimkus to become chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee.
Kind of a local guy, Greg Walden.
Yeah, from Oregon, great guy, does a fantastic job. One of my very good friends came into Congress with me. Right now, there's Robert Adderholt, who would be the most senior. I don't think he'll become chairman.
Alabama 4, is it?
Yeah. I don't see him being full committee chairman. The next one in line is Kay Granger, who is from Texas. She would become the first woman chairman of the Full Appropriations Committee in the history of the United States. It would be hard for our steering committee to oversee her or to pass her up, but then I'm next in line.
What about you?
Well, I'm next in line.
Heck with Kay.
And if Kay if they don't want Kay, if Kay doesn't get it and stuff, I want to be there and be ready to go. Whether I really have a shot at it or not, I don't know, because it mostly goes by seniority, most of the time. And I could make a case that I could be a great chairman and would make that case. So my name's out there. I want it out there in case the steering committee, who makes these decisions, decides that they want to skip over Kay. And then there's a couple guys. Tom Cole is about, 4 or 5 places below me on seniority on the committee. From Oklahoma, is a great guy. I keep telling him I want him to be speaker. He would be a fantastic speaker.
What about you?
I wouldn't take the speaker's job if they gave it to me.
Now, I've seen you pound the gavel a few times over some big votes.
And I don't mind doing that. But to be the Speaker of the House in Washington, as divided as things are, I don't know that any speaker could actually be successful.
Well, we're not worried about you being successful. We're worried about you representing Idaho.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I could do a lot of that kind of stuff, but I can do that behind the scenes now.
Right.
But Tom Cole would be great. And then there's a kind of a young guy from Georgia that's kind of got his name out there, too. I don't think they'll go down the list that far to find a chairman. But my name's out there, and it's being tossed around, and I don't discourage that, because when the time comes, the first thing we ought to be concentrating on is maintaining the majority. If we don't maintain the majority, then none of us are running for chairman of the Full Appropriations Committee. We're running for ranking member.
No, that's a very good point. Congressman Mike Simpson with us. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You know, what you don't get a lot of credit for is that you just grind. You just work, and a lot of what you do is behind the scenes.
Most of what we do is behind the scenes,
right.
Yeah.
You know, you're not out there with the headlines and all that stuff, but you get things done when it comes to being effective, whether it's the INL, whether it's helping out folks with constituent services in the second CD and the first CD, whether it's helping with Gowan Field, even though it's not in your district.
Yep.
Is that really the true role? Most of us think, well, you know, the congressman should be doing this, doing that, but is it really a lot of toiling behind the scenes?
I think that's the majority of the job, and that's what we're elected to do. I get asked all the time, you know, I've been there for a number of years, why don't I ever see you on CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or any of the news programs and stuff like that? We are on occasionally, I mean, very rarely, but that's not something I seek out. My job, I think, is to do the job for the people of Idaho and for the country, frankly. When you're chairman of the Energy and Water Committee, there are a lot of national labs throughout this country that I'm responsible for making sure they have the appropriate funding, making sure that a lot of people don't understand that in my part of the bill on energy and water, we actually do the nuclear weapons posture review and all that kind of stuff, and make sure that our nuclear weapons are modernized and reliable and that type of thing. So I enjoy that part of it. I actually enjoy just the work of the job. One of the things that we're starting to get, in fact, there's going to be a press conference later on this morning that I've been working on for 6 years, is trying to fix the how we fund wildfires in this country. And the bill that I started working on 6 years ago, gone through different machinations, and in this last omnibus appropriation, we actually got the bill in, and it was pretty much the bill that I wrote with Chief Tidwell, you know, an Idaho native and stuff, and Secretary Jewell. And that then after I introduced it, Senator Crapo and Senator Risch took it up in the Senate. A lot of hard work went into that bill, but it probably will have, I think it's the most significant bill that's passed in the last 50 years affecting the Forest Service and how they manage our forests and stuff. So I'm more proud of that than I am anything else we do.
Congressman Mike Simpson with us. You mentioned the nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk of modernization. What can you tell us about that? It's scary that if our weapons are getting antiquated, you're on the front lines.
Well, we do. We have weapons laboratories like Los Alamos and Sandia down in New Mexico, and they need to be modernized. The laboratories that do our weapons review and weapons modernization and that kind of stuff, and they have to certify the Secretary of Energy to the President every year that our nuclear weapons are safe and reliable, and a lot of it just takes modernization programs, which cost a lot of money. There's every few years, and just this year they came out with the new nuclear posture review, and that is what should our position be on nuclear weapons, how many should we have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What are the threats that we face? There are proposals in this nuclear posture review that I want to talk to the Defense Department and the Secretary of State and others about, where they're talking about low-yield nuclear weapons because other countries like Russia and China are developing those. What that means is we've had our theory in nuclear weapons in the past has been MAD, mutually assured destruction. We have enough weapons that if you were to launch a strike against us, you could be assured that you were going to be destroyed. That's a little scary, but that's been the review, and we've always figured we were dealing with rational people, and they wouldn't want to destroy themselves. So when Russia and China start developing low-yield weapons that could be used in the field, we're looking at it as, if our only response is major retaliation, is that appropriate if that's the only thing we have in our stockpile? So they're talking about maybe developing low-yield nuclear weapons as a way of responding to that, saying that would decrease the likelihood that the low-level yield weapons would be used in a battle. I'm not sure that it wouldn't increase the chances of them being used, which kind of scares me. So that's the type of thing we debate. That's the type of thing that I think is fascinating and interesting to talk to people that have obviously different opinions on it, and that's what we'll be doing over the next year.
Congressman Mike Simpson with us. Let's go to Lori in Boise for Congressman Simpson. Good morning, Lori.
Good morning. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning.
And I appreciate his your service and all these years. And my question is, I'm a supporter of the Convention of States project. Unfortunately, Idaho legislature chose not to address that this year. And the idea is that the framers intended that there'd be a lot of frequent turnover in the House and the Senate. And I'm a grandma.
Mm-hmm.
I have children that are born in 1978, and some of the same people are in Congress or Senate, House of Representatives that were there when they were born. They're 40 years old, 41 years old, and I do not contemplate that is the best system for our governance. And part of the issue too is that it enables a system of lobbying and special interests to take place, and the idea that people rise up in seniority, and it's important to keep them there because then they have more influence on the committees and so on. And that would not be the case if there were more turnover and people didn't get so cozy with each other over decades in Washington. And so my question is, would you be willing to step down or voluntarily just retire after this next term?
I step down after this next election and run for re-election. We have, people talk about term limits. We have term limits. Every 2 years, my term is up, and I have to get re-elected by the people. The idea that rapid turnover is going to change it is surprising to me, in that you would be amazed how much turnover there is in Congress. I actually think that Congress is like a board of directors, that you need people there that have been there for a while, that got whiskers, that know what's going on. You got people that are in the mid-range, that are the workers that get out and do things, and you need young people, new people coming in that got fresh ideas. You need that mix. How would you like to go to a doctor and say, okay, we got term limits on doctors. We don't want any doctor to serve more than 6 years. I want a doctor with some experience, frankly, when I go to the doctor. So it takes that mixture. I can remember when I was in the state legislature, there was a guy who was the minority leader from Sandpoint, Jim Stoichev, great guy. Everybody loved Jim. He was a lunch bucket Democrat. And one day I went to him with this idea that I had on taxes. I can't remember specifically what the idea was, but I went to him and said, hey, Jim, this makes a lot of sense, And Jim looked at it and he says, you're right, Mike. He says, that really does make a lot of sense. Now let me tell you what happened in 1960 or whatever when we tried doing that. And so you need people that have had that kind of experience. If you really want to turn over government to bureaucrats, put in term limits. That's exactly what would happen, because you would be surprised how many, the lobbyists, what they're going to do is get friendly with the people the staff and people that work in the bureaucracies and stuff. I actually think that people that have been there for a while are more free to vote their conscience. To vote the way they think it's right, regardless of whether it might be popular or not. And to me, that's what's important. So I just disagree with the idea of term limits. And besides, as I said at the beginning, we kind of have those in that if people don't think I'm doing a good job, they'll elect somebody else, and they should.
Lori, thank you for the call. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And we're back with Congressman Simpson. Before we get to some more phone calls, let's start talking about the state of Congress. Paul Ryan stepping down, a lot of other folks leaving. What is that? You're in Congress. What does that mean?
We're losing some really good people that have just decided that they've kind of had enough. Congress is in that state of dysfunction right now where it's hard to get anything done. It would be difficult for any speaker, frankly, to be successful, because even within our conference, we're divided between those that are the Freedom Caucus, the far right, if you will, and those that are the more moderate Republicans, particularly from the Northeast and that type of stuff. And it's hard to get consensus on almost anything. And consequently, what a speaker does is he says, to pass XYZ bill, I need 218 votes. If I can't get 218 votes out of the 237 in our conference, that means I have to look to the other side of the aisle to bring in some votes, which means you're going to moderate the bill more so that you can get some of those votes. I once told some of my friends in the Freedom Caucus, I said, you make us spend more money than we normally would. And they looked at me like I was crazy because these are the fiscal conservatives, cut everything and all that
Jim
kind of
Jordan,
stuff. Yeah. And I told them, this is what happens. I saw it in the state legislature when I was speaker and now in Congress, is that the Appropriations Committee, we're not big spenders or anything like that. We write our bills to the Republican budget resolution that's been passed by the House. And Republicans have voted for it. And it's our budget resolution. That sets the top line of spending. Then we write our bills within that. Well, then we bring a bill to the floor like the energy and water bill, and members of the Freedom Caucus go, oh, that's too much. We shouldn't have spent that much. Well, it matches the budget resolution that we passed. But if I can't get 218 votes, guess what? If I move it more in the direction you want by cutting more spending out, I lose my Northeast Republicans, more moderate Republicans, so I don't get 218. Guess what? I got to go to the Democrats to get some votes. That means we increase spending on some of the programs that they want. So ultimately, the result is that rather than decrease spending like you profess to want to do, you actually increase spending. And they looked at me and said, well, I understand what you're saying, but I don't agree with you. I said, you don't have to agree with me. It's just what happens,
Right. Congressman Mike Simpson with us. Let's go back to the phones. Matt Otter, no relation to Governor Otter, but he is the staunchest supporter of Governor Otter. Joins us now at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Matt.
Hey, good morning, Kevin Miller. Good morning, Congressman Simpson. How you guys doing this morning?
Good. How are you?
Hey, pretty good. Hey, Congressman, I wanted to ask you, I vote for you every 2 years. You do a great job for Idaho. You represent Idaho's values. And I just wanted to say you do a great job.
Well, thank you.
First, I wanted to ask you what your views on border security and President Trump's agenda. And just I'll let you talk and just give me an idea of why I should vote for you again.
Okay. First, let's talk about President Trump. It's kind of, people ask me about him all the time, and it is sometimes hard to talk about it because it's which President Trump are you talking about? Are you talking about the President Trump that gets up early in the morning and tweets and all this kind of stuff, or are you talking about the agenda of President Trump? I agree with the agenda of President Trump. He's been doing some really good things on our economy, on reducing the burdens of regulations and those types of things. I think the tax cut was an absolutely necessary thing to do to get our economy moving. I agree with him in terms of needing to increase border security. I don't know that we need to build a wall for 200 or 2,600 miles or whatever the length of the border is. But we do need to increase border security. Now, in some places, that means a wall. In some places, it might mean increased border agents and drones and those types of things. And in other places, you really couldn't build a wall because of the geography and stuff of the place. But increasing border security is absolutely necessary if you're going to convince the American people that we need to do immigration reform and deal with 10 to 14 million people that are here illegally. So I agree with 99% of I don't know if that's the right percentage, but I agree with an awful lot of the Trump agenda and the direction the country's headed. People say that, all this tax cut, it was just a giveaway to the rich. Listen, when you have the highest corporate tax rate in the world, it makes it hard for our companies to be competitive. And when we have a tax system that is different, which I could explain, than other countries have a tax system which penalizes countries if you're located in the United States, that just doesn't make economic sense. And people have said, well, it adds $1.5 billion to the deficit. The reality is that when CBO looked at this tax cut, they estimated that if you put it into effect, the economic growth of our economy would go from 1.8% a year to 1.9%. If that's the case, then yeah, you're going to lose revenue. It's going to cost you $1.5 trillion over the 10-year period. The reality is if you increase economic growth from the 1.8 to 2.5, you've paid for it. And so we've seen economic growth in the last couple quarters that are 2.5, 2.7 in that neighborhood. A couple of them, I think, were in the 3 range. Will that continue for the 10-year period of this estimate? I don't know. But I can tell you that if we don't get the economy growing at a faster rate than it has been the last 8 years or 9 years, we will never balance this budget. People talk about how much we spend, and it is amazing that, real briefly, a budget lesson here. 2/3 of our budget is called mandatory spending. That's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the debt. That's 2/3 of the budget. That means if you were to change that spending level, you'd have to change the Social Security law or the Medicare law or whatever. 1/3 of it is what we actually appropriate money for. That's the 12 different bills that we pass. That's defense. That's everything you typically think of as government. Defense, Department of Agriculture, Department of Commerce, Energy and Water, all that kind of stuff. We spend less on the discretionary part of the budget today than we did in 2010. That's 8 years ago.
That's because of the growth of the other programs?
It's the growth of the other programs, the mandatory programs that are eating up more and more of the budget and creating the deficit. And unless we have the courage to address the mandatory programs, it's going to be hard to balance this budget. Those are hard to touch. You know, Social Security has always been the third rail. If you touch it, you die. And but we have to have the courage to do that, or you're not going to have a Social Security program there or a Medicare program there. Not for us, but for future generations. And we got to think about these kids that are starting to work now, young people that are 20 years old, starting to put money into the Social Security system. It won't be there when they retire if we don't make some fundamental changes to it and yet protect the people that are currently on it.
Or the people 50 and over.
Yeah. I'm in that range.
Last time it was 55. Which
yeah, I know it is. But we've got to make some fun, and we've got to have the courage to do it. And frankly, if we could solve that problem, and if every one of us lost our election because of it,
right,
that'd be okay with me.
Would it?
Yeah, it would. Because it is a big enough issue that it really needs to be solved.
The challenge, though, of course, is you solve it once, and then somebody comes back and does it. I have a question for you, though, from Katie. Can you please ask Congressman Simpson about the Child and Dependent Care Credit? My husband and I paid over $19,000 in child care for our 2 children in 2017 and received a credit of $219 on our federal income taxes. Would Congressman Simpson help change the tax code for the Child and Dependent Care Credit for working middle-class families?
My first response is to say yes, but I would want to know more about it. And what I would encourage, who'd you say it was?
Katie.
I would encourage Katie to call our office and talk to Nikki or any of the staff in there about it and get me the information on it. And I'm not an expert on the tax code and stuff, but I would certainly like to look into it and see what it is, because I actually think you ought to be able to write off your child care and stuff from your taxes.
Congressman Simpson, we appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
You bet. Great to be with you.
Great to have you. Great to have you. You're listening to Kevin Miller on. And we continue on with the inside world of politics. Congressman Mike Simpson with us. Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's take a look at the frustration people have with Congress. People say the Republicans can't get anything done, but are you worried about the fate of the House, which is where you are? And we'll throw in the Senate as well on the upcoming midterms. Are we in trouble?
I am worried about it. Right now we've got a 37 or 38, something like that, seat majority. If we lose 23 seats, I think is the number, then the Democrats would take control. Obviously, I don't want the Democrats to take control. I don't want Nancy Pelosi to become the speaker again. But if you look historically, during a president's first midterm election after his election, which is what this is, historically, they lose about 23 seats. So that makes it kind of nervous. And when I see the number of people that have decided to retire for one reason or another, on the Republican side anyway, it is very concerning. The Democrat, they say they are not as worried. Experts that look at it say they're not as worried about the Senate flipping, because if you look at the seats that are up, the third of the Senate, it's Democratic seats, and a lot of them, or many of them, in states that Trump won, such as West Virginia, Indiana, some of those. There's only like 2 Republican seats that they say are in jeopardy. So they're not as worried about the Senate flipping. But I don't know. I've been watching the election results for these special elections, and they're kind of forewarning of what's going on out there. And when you have districts that are as red as they get, like this one in Arizona that Trump won by 21%, I think, and Romney won by 25%, and the Republican candidate wins by 5%, you got to wonder what's going on. The enthusiasm in this election so far has been on the Democratic side.
Well, or in Pennsylvania, I used to work in that area with Congressman Murphy's old seat. So,
and if you look at that campaign that went on there, the Democrat essentially ran as a Republican.
Right.
It's I won't vote for Nancy Pelosi. Right. I'm strong on defense. All that kind of stuff.
A big populist region. So if the House flips, there's been talk of impeachment.
I suspect that there are going to be many members of the Democratic Party who have filed articles of impeachment right now that would want to take that up. I think much of that depends on how the Mueller investigation would have turned out. I had a guy, or several guys. I was at some reception a couple of months ago, and these 4 people were standing around talking. And I walked up to them and I said, "Hey, okay, you're here. Let's ask you." I said, "Okay, what?" And they said, "When are you guys going to impeach this guy?" And I said, the Constitution allows us to impeach for high crimes and misdemeanors. Not because you don't like his agenda, not because you don't like his hairdo, not because, whatever. Right. Shouldn't we kind of wait and see what happens with any of these investigations and stuff? I said, what would we impeach him for? And they said, well, how about lying to the American people? I said, wait a minute, we're talking about a politician here. I said, you mean lying to the American people like if you like your health care system, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. Lying like that, And they kind of backed off. But there would be a move among Democrats, whether they would be enough, and whether if Nancy became Speaker, she would be stupid enough to proceed with impeachment. I don't know.
Congressman Mike Simpson with us. Let's go back to the phones, and we go to Tom in Nampa on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. I want to talk to the congressman a little bit about the tax cut bill, and I would hope you let the dialogue with it back and forth a little bit before you push the "that's enough" button on me.
I love that's enough button.
That happens a lot. It seems like, and all of a sudden I'm talking to dead air. I've been a lifelong Republican for one of the main reasons of fiscal responsibility, and I think this tax bill was totally irresponsible. The deficit was already running close to $600 billion a year, and you just don't cut taxes when the deficit's already that high. Now the deficit's running almost $800 billion. I keep track of this national debt clock, and you rightly said that the entitlements make up 2/3 of the budget, and the fastest growing thing is going to be the national debt, which you can't control or cut when interest rates start rising. So why in the world, the economy is already going up even before this cut was made because we have a president that's pro-business. So why be so fiscally irresponsible? You think this is cutting taxes is going to raise revenues? Well, already the first quarter has seen the record amount of borrowing ever.
Okay. Let me tell you that, in my view, we have had, for the last 8 years during the Obama administration, the recovery has been 1.8% growth in GDP per year. 1.8. Slowest ever during a recovery. We have to get the economy growing. When you have the highest, and the important part of the tax cut to me was the corporate tax rate, because you cannot have the highest corporate tax rate in the world and be competitive. And so I think it was if I actually thought that over this 10-year period, which is the window we look at for what it's going to cost or what you're going to get in revenue, if you look over that 10-year period, if you can get the economy growing from, instead of 1.8% to 2.5% over that 10-year period, you've paid for the tax cut. I actually think it will grow more than that because I think the economy is ready to do that. But actually reducing taxes on the American people and on businesses, which, you're the one that pays business taxes just like I am because they pass it on through their consumer goods and stuff. But I think reducing the tax rate was vitally important to get the economy growing. And I don't think, if I honestly thought that it was going to add to the deficit in the long run, I wouldn't have voted for it. I actually think it's going to help reduce the deficit. Now, admittedly, there are people that disagree with me.
Okay, the economy grew at 3% during the summer quarter. And I think that was a result of having a president to cut back on some of the onerous regulations.
I think you're right.
Now that we got a tax cut, it grew by 2.3%. It actually grew less in the first quarter.
Right. But that will vary from quarter to quarter over this period. What I'm looking at is a sustained rate over the 4 or 5 year period, but hopefully over the 10-year period.
Well, what I'm afraid of is that, if you get the word about inflation, anytime you have an economy growing pretty fast, inflation picks up, and that means the Fed raises the interest rates. Okay, if you just have the national debt go up to, say, 5% of financing, that's $1 trillion just alone for interest on the debt.
You're right.
The way they was able to keep interest on the debt down so low during the Obama administration is the interest rates are so low that they financed it with 90 and 180-day Treasury notes that were paying next to nothing in interest. Now those are up to 1%. They're climbing, and the 10-year notes
get it worded edgewise with Tom.
Well, I mean,
he's been getting ready for the "that's enough" button.
He's right, and I agree with him on a lot of his analysis. But what I disagree with on to some degree is what the solution is in trying to get the economy growing faster. But you're right. I think having a more business-friendly government, one that reduces the regulations and the burden and puts predictability into the business climate, was very important in increasing that growth rate. But I don't think it's enough. I actually think, when you look at it with say you're a business and you make, pick a number, $100 billion in profit next year. What can you do with it as a business? You can pay your employees, increase their salary, but then it's taxed, or you can give it all to your CEO but then it's taxed, or you can put it in, savings to grow your company and expand, your goods, which is a good thing. So for business, a profit is a way of keeping score.
All right, Tom, thank you for the call. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. We're taking our cues here. We continue on KIDO Talk Radio. Congressman Mike Simpson with us, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Some big national issues. Obviously, the Mueller investigation continues.
Yep.
What's the congressional perspective on that?
I think a majority of members of Congress want the Mueller investigation to continue and to come to some conclusion. It's the only way that I think the public will say, okay, he didn't have anything to do with obstruction of justice or interference in the election or that kind of stuff. What I wish Congress would do that we have not done because we've been so focused on all of this other stuff is find out how Russia did what they did and what can we do to prevent it in the future. And they're really, I guess the one part that kind of dismays me about the Trump administration to some degree is their unwillingness to take on Russia on this issue. I wish the president would come out and say, this is nonsense. We're going to impose sanctions or whatever it's going to take. But his unwillingness to really take on Russia has been of concern to me, I guess.
Well, you take a look at, figuring out what is real, what is disinformation, who's a useful idiot. Yeah. We wear the moniker well here in the morning. But, how do you prevent that in the age of social media where everybody just circulates stuff?
And that's the real challenge. And I've been talking with the Idaho National Laboratory does a lot with cybersecurity and stuff because they have some unique capabilities there. And in fact, a lot of their budget is growing in the arena of cybersecurity. And I know that Secretary Perry's one of his highest priorities is cybersecurity, and we talk about privacy, and there is no more privacy. If somebody wants your information, they can pretty much get it because we put it out there where somebody can go in and hack it and stuff, and we're always trying to stay one step ahead of the hackers, and the hackers seem to be always one step ahead of us. It is the challenge of the future, and I'm not as worried, to tell you the truth, about a nuclear weapon being fired at us as I am a cyber attack that could do huge damage to our economy, could take down our economy. I mean, you attack our electrical grid, you attack a banking system, those kind of things. I think that's where the next wars will be fought, is in cyber world, if you will. And I'm not an expert in that arena, but
isn't that
it's
tough?
scary.
Isn't that tough for us to believe in? Again, you have access to the information, but for most of us, born of a certain age, yes, it's kind of nice. It's like playing a video game, but it's currency today. This social media, this cyber stuff. Yeah.
You bet it is. It's like Bitcoins.
Yeah.
I've never figured out how Bitcoins actually work. You mean it's a currency, and
Right.
it is amazing to me though how this is kind of taken over as a currency.
Right.
But would you invest in it when you see it one day it's $19,000, the next day it's 12, and I'm kind of going, really?
Right. Yeah, you have to be fairly shrewd. It was the high is 19, and I think it's down to like 6 now, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I saw this program where they're talking to this kid that's like 20 years old that's a multimillionaire because of his investment in buying Bitcoins and stuff. I go, really?
Right.
It's kind of a world with which I'm unfamiliar.
Right, but it's where the world's going.
That's right. So it makes old farts like me and you go,
yeah.
Wow, I'm glad I'm getting old.
Indeed. Let's go to Cindy in Caldwell for Congressman Mike Simpson at KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Cindy.
Yes. Good morning, Kevin. I am trying to regain some degree of composure with Mr. Simpson, but
okay.
Great with Alex. Oh, right on. I'm sorry we didn't switch times here. I guess it really saddens me with all that's come out about this Mueller investigation, and bless God that Fox has that Liberty program on Sunday night. I won't name the person because I happen to agree with him. This investigation, which this gentleman, did nothing to stand by our commander-in-chief. How many times I called your office, sir, when I was working with the Republican Party for this president? I don't think it's funny to demean either the Freedom Caucus.
I don't think I've demeaned them.
Well, you actually called them out about the money deal. I'm working.
I didn't call them out. I just said what the situation was.
Well, this is the situation, sir. You did nothing to get to this president in office. I happen to agree with that gentleman on Sunday Night Fox. They're nothing but this has gone on and on, millions of dollars. You've done nothing to stand behind your, commander-in-chief. The Freedom Caucus has over 30 people signed on to, I would say, support the strongest conservative candidate, which is Raul Labrador, who came alongside our president because he cared about the borders. He cared about this. I don't find anything frivolous. At least, Kevin was talking about the Democrat Party. At least, their duplicity, their fraud, their misleading. But when the moral majority pointed a finger and actually would have wanted and had a socialist, a liar par none, from Benghazi to just everything. What about all Mrs. Clinton and the uranium? I mean, it just sickens me that no one,
well, that's a good
will
point,
stand
Cindy.
for our president.
It is a good point, but I will tell you this, that someone's bad behavior doesn't make someone else's bad behavior correct.
Well, once again, you're calling our president's bad behavior. No, you did nothing to get this president elected. You did nothing to stand by him.
You have no idea what I did or didn't do you?
Oh, yes, calling your office, unless the people, sir, that you hire in your office, like the other person, Mr. Ocklis, would like to say, well, I don't know what they do. You know what, then I spoke with them. I have letters from you, sir. So I will just say to you, I am sorry, after this president has done the greatest thing for world peace with this situation over in North Korea.
I give him credit for that.
Well,
I have
thank
given
you
him
very
credit
much
for that.
because I don't see you.
But I will tell you this, Cindy. Let me say a word in X-Wise because you've got your rant out now. So let me say, my job is not to support this president or any other president. My job is to represent the people of the state of Idaho. I do the best job that I possibly can. When the president is correct, I will call him out and say, yes, I agree with him on that. If you listen to what I said earlier, I agree with much of his agenda. I don't agree with the tweeting that is after that is demonstrably false. He says things that are just not true. And that bothers me to some degree. But mostly it's about things that don't really matter. I actually think that we need to find out what happened, and I will tell you that if there's one person that from everything I've known, and I've talked to this individual in previous years, but Mueller is a straight shooter, and I think he will get to the bottom of this. And if there's nothing that's gone on there, and believe me, I don't think anything has. I have seen nothing that would indicate to me that this president or his campaign had anything to do with Russian interference in our election. I've said that repeatedly. But we've got to get to the bottom of it so that people have some confidence in it. That's all I'm saying. I am not critical of what this president has done and his agenda. And if you will look, I have voted for his agenda about 100% of the time.
All right, Congressman Simpson, Cindy, thank you. Traffic and weather together. Congressman Simpson, 10 seconds left. Thank you.
Great to be with you again. Talk about some important issues that are going on around the state and around the country.
That's what we love about you. You don't back down, so thank you, sir.
My job is to just say what's on my mind.
All right.
Thank you.
Good day. God bless. Keep the faith, everyone.